Chapter 41. Why do I feel like he is interested in me? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 41. Why do I feel like he is interested in me? Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. There was only one way for men to pick up girls. Jin Shuechu said, I will get my agent to contact you. If possible, I would like the shooting to be done as soon as possible. Miss Mai nodded excitedly. Yes, yes. We can accommodate any time. I have some business to tend to. Goodbye, Jin Shuechu said. Yan Qingxi was still bewildered by the whole exchange when Miss Mai pulled her in. Excellent. Truly. Excellent. King Jin is quite a nice person. I used to think that he was too proud and egotistical. Yan Qingxi yawned and said, Why do I feel like he's trying to bed me? Miss Mai poked at Yan Qingxi's head. Hey. Even if he wants to sleep with you, you are going for the shoot. That's the one and only Jin Shuechu, you know. Yan Qingxi was jolted awake by the news. Any signs of sleepiness faded as she exclaimed, Ah. He's Jin Shuechu. You're finally awake. Yan Qingxi muttered, Yes, I am awake. Shui God. Jin Shuechu was regarded as a god in the music industry for the decade. He debuted at the age of 16 with a single that quickly blew up the charts. As the years passed, the popularity of music records fell and many artists ended up unemployed. Despite the hard times, the sales of every Jin Shuechu album easily hit the millionth mark. His fanbase was loyal to the end. Every concert drew a crowd of tens of thousands. Today, 1 million record sales was equivalent to what? Bov Jin Shuechu dominated every award ceremony in the music industry. Other than the fact that every song he put out became a classic, his success was also fueled by his natural good looks. He was a fashion icon. How else would he gain the love of the gaggles of fangirls? He was known as Shui God beyond the industry. Back then, when Yan Qingxi was still young and naive, she had been a fan of Jin Shuechu. Miss Mai pinched Yan Qingxi's arm. Yes, that was Shui God. Truly, every cloud has a silver lining. If you can debut in Jin Shuechu's MV, it'll be a good starting point. Yan Qingxi nodded in agreement. It would be good for her. The determination in her heart flared up. God was indeed giving her a different path. From her memory, Jin Shuechu was the embodiment of youth and beauty. He stood out with his dashing good looks, an unparalleled talent for music, and a wild temperament. The man from last night. He was King, the lady on the balcony, and even wanted to have a go with Yan Qingxi. Yan Qingxi smirked and shook her head. Evidently, this idol was only perfect on screen. Before departing, Miss Mai handed Yan Qingxi a second-hand phone. Use this phone in the meantime, the number is new. We'll get a better one when you have the money. Rest for today and I'll pick you up tomorrow afternoon. Yan Qingxi shrugged. Okay. Regardless, being cast in Jin Shuechu's MV made Yan Qingxi rather excited. Jin Shuechu's name in the entertainment industry was gold-rated, which would boost her reputation. It did not matter if Jin Shuechu wanted to bed her, she would use whatever advantage she had. Her N.Gold did not waver and she would reach it by any means necessary. That night, Yan Qingxi received a mail from Country M. After reading the contents, Yan Qingxi's lips quirked upwards, her smile looked as if it was dipped in poison. A deep-seated hatred radiated from her very core. Yan Qingxi took her phone and dialed the number in the mail. The call was answered seconds later. Is this Tang Yuyao? There was a pause before the voice spoke. It's me. Who are you? Chapter 42. Crying will not avenge her eye. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 42. Crying will not avenge her eye. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Yan Qingxi said, I take it you have not found your sister who has been missing for 8 years. A loud sound akin to glass breaking was heard from the other end of the phone. The tone of the woman changed. Who are you? Yan Qingxi slowly lifted her chin. I am the person who can help you. If you want to know more about your sister, meet me at Central Square now. She hung up the phone and switched off the computer. She dressed herself in a casual black sports attire, complete with a cap. She put on a face mask and went out into the night. It was 10 o'clock at night and Central Square was buzzing with activity. The plaza dance session had ended and the old ladies were leaving. There were still skateboarders riding around and couples in love. A group of hip-hop dancers were having a showdown. The city night was as vibrant as it was in the day. Yan Qingxi saw a thin figure sitting by one of the flower beds. After a moment of observation, she walked over. She sat down behind the figure so that they were back to back. Yan Qingxi chuckled. Not bad with punctuality. Don't turn around. If you try, I won't give you anything. Tang Yuyao froze in surprise. Her body was already halfway through the motion of turning. She slowly retracted her body and faced the front. Who are you and what do you know? Where is my sister now? Yan Qingxi detected the urgency in the woman's tone, there was a tremble in her voice. She looked up at the sky above and said, Stop your search. She's already dead. Tang Yuyao immediately crumbled. No. I don't believe you. My sister. She's alive. Whether you believe me, it's up to you. 3 years ago, I used this secret to threaten Yan Songnan and prevented an unexpected calamity. I don't believe you. Yan Qingxi interjected her. 8 years ago, Tang Yuyan was the secretary for Yan Songnan. She caught his eye. He drugged her and took obscene photos of her as blackmail, so she obediently did what he wanted. She got pregnant and his wife, Yi Lingji, found out about the affair. She went straight to your sister and kicked her in the stomach multiple times. Your sister was 4 months pregnant then. She miscarried and due to the excessive blood loss, passed away with the baby. The dead cannot rise again, so the couple worked together to get rid of the body and falsified documents stating your sister left her job and country. Yan Qingxi tossed an envelope to Tang Yuyao. Tang Yuyao opened it and a slew of obscene photos assaulted her senses. One of them showed a pregnant Tang Yuyan. Her hands were shaking badly at this point. She covered her mouth but there was no stopping the anguished cries that escaped her throat. Yan Qingxi narrowed her eyes. The cries reminded her of herself when her mother died. As the years passed, Yan Qingxi had slowly forgotten how to cry. Crying is not going to help. Your sister cannot be revived but she can be avenged. Tang Yuyao rubbed away her tears and gritted her teeth. I want to avenge my sister's death. Then ruin his family. Strip him of everything he owns, his reputation, his wealth, his life. A life for a life, that is the best way. Why are you helping me? The red lips twisted into a smile. Why wouldn't I? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Tang Yuyao clenched her fingers around the photos. Okay, I will work with you but where do I start? Yan Qingxi said coldly, your beauty is your weapon. The easiest way to get close to a man is naturally through sex. Make him fall so deeply for you that he's willing to abandon his wife and grant you the Yan family fortune. Then, lastly. A smile crept up her face and malice danced in her eyes. Lastly, a life for a life. Chapter 43. Crying will not avenge her too. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 43. Crying will not avenge her too. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Tang Yuyao's heart was in conflict. She studied the photos in her hand, the cold, hard evidence. She thought of the years they spent together with only each other to rely on. Her sister dropped out of university so that she could fund Tang Yuyao's studies. Lo Tang Yuyao made her decision. I understand. A second envelope landed in her lap. Yen Songnan's personal details, memorize them. Seducing men requires skills. Learn from the tutorial. How do I contact you after this? Do not contact me. If the need arises, I will reach out to you. Alright. After Tang Yuyao had left, Yan Qingxi stayed on in Central Square, unmoving. She felt so evil, pulling in an innocent lady like Tang Yuyao into her complicated revenge scheme. In the end, the plan had been set in motion and she had nothing to regret. Sympathy was not something she needed. Yan Qingxi got up to leave. Some skateboarding youths whistled at her as she walked past. She scanned the crowd and something caught her eye. She grinned and thought, God really is on my side. Yan Qingxi squinted her eyes at the attractive youth skateboarding a distance away. Yan Ming Xiu, she enunciated. It just so happened that her stepbrother, Yan Mingxiu, was among the youths. He was her brother from a different mother and the treasured son of the Yan family. Yan Qingxi laughed at her good fortune. Later, she took out a brow blade from her pocket. Bringing a blade was a wise decision. She walked to the car park off to the side of the plaza. Yan Mingxiu loved motorized vehicles ever since he was a child. Yi Lingji spoiled him rotten and only bought the best for him. Among the rows of mountain bikes and electric cars, there was a Harley motorbike that stood out. Yan Qingxi checked that the coast was clear and walked quickly over to the motorbike. The business was over in a flash. As Yan Qingxi turned to leave, she saw a luxurious car drove by the road 2 meters away. In the car, Yu Tingfeng caught a glimpse of Yan Qingxi's hateful eyes. They were filled with hatred, poison, and evil. It was as if all the world's evil was concentrated in them. Yu Tingfeng did not consider himself a good man, but faced with those eyes, he felt his back grow cold. Yu Tingfeng shouted, "Stop the car." Yu Tingfeng ran down from the car, but Yan Qingxi was nowhere to be seen. Although she wore a cap and a face mask, Yu Tingfeng could identify her at first glance. There was no hesitation on his part. What was she doing in that get-up so late at night? Yu Tingfeng was suspicious. He carried his doubts back into the car. Before the car pulled away, he saw that Yan Mingxiu had walked to the parking shed and brought out his motorbike. Yu Tingfeng squinted his eyes. Just now. Yan Qingxi stopped in front of that particular motorbike. What did she do? Follow him, Yu Tingfeng ordered the driver. Yes, sir. The driver obeyed. Around 10 minutes later, Yu Tingfeng was witness to an accident. Yan Mingxiu appeared to have lost control of his motorbike and did not stop for the red light. It was a head-on collision between the motorbike and an SUV at the junction. As for Yan Mingxiu, his body was tossed high up into the air before landing heavily on the road. He laid unconscious on the scene, with blood pooling beneath him. Everything was clear to Yu Tingfeng now. His lips curled into a smirk. Those almond-shaped eyes twinkled with excitement in the dark night. Chapter 44. Yan Qingxi, that interesting woman. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 44. Yan Qingxi, that interesting woman. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Those almond-shaped eyes twinkled with excitement in the dark night. Yan Qingxi was such an interesting person. The driver was shocked and quickly called out, "Young master, that is the Yan family's young master. We need to dial 120 for the ambulance." Yu Tingfeng's gaze landed on him. Under those cold, piercing eyes, he felt as if a sharpened blade was pressed against his carotid. The look was detached and sinister. Yu Tingfeng spoke in a calm voice, "What young master? I saw nothing. Wasn't that A smile crept on Yutingfeng's face. Dead or alive, does he concern you? No. No. Turn around and drive home. Yes. At home, Mrs. Yu found Yutingfeng to be in a good mood today. She was contemplating on whether to bring up Yen Rook when Yutingfeng spoke. Ma, I'm in a good mood now. Don't mention anything that will make me unhappy. Mrs. Yu immediately killed the thought and said, hee hee, okay. Okay. I won't say anything. Back in his room, Yutingfeng made a call. Hello, Chin Air. I heard you were transferred to the traffic bureau. I need a small favor. The next day, Miss Mike came over early in the morning. Go get dressed. We're going to the studio for the photo shoot. Yan Qingxi scrolled the news on her phone and asked, wasn't that role a bust? She figured after the stunt she pulled on Yutingfeng, the bastard would not forgive her so easily. Yet, she still got the role. Miss Mai poked Yan Qingxi in the head. Can't you say something nice? Yan Qingxi chuckled. I'm sorry. Tisk, aren't you in a good mood today? Quite good. Miss Mai eyed the article on Yan Qingxi's phone with curiosity. It was just the current news. Young people these days are so reckless on the road. Yan Qingxi swiped the news aside. Ain't that true? It's the rich who like to show off. On the news, it was written, yesterday night, at 2300 hours, a youth was speeding on his motorbike and ran a red light which led to an unfortunate collision with an SUV. The youth was flung from his motorbike and suffered multiple bone fractures. He was found in an unconscious state and is currently still in critical condition. A reminder to the general public about road safety. Obey the traffic rules and do not speed within the city limits. Yan Qingxi switched off her phone. At 8 a.m., Xiao Su came to pick her up to go to the studio. Director Kai's drama was set in the modern day with a supernatural twist, a theme that was uncommon. After some discussion between Miss Mai and Director Kai, it was decided that Yan Qingxi would be the female lead. As per Director Kai's words, Yan Qingxi was too eye-catching to be relegated to a secondary role. Even if she was given the secondary role, her beauty would only overshadow the lead actress, so they might as well give her the lead role. She was to play a woman who oozed sex appeal and had a venomous tongue. The description matched Yan Qingxi to the T. Yan Qingxi changed into the costume and got her makeup done. Then, she did a few poses for the photographer. Once the solo photo shoot was done, she had to do another round with the male lead. The male lead was a greenhorn called Leng Ran. He had an innocent but handsome face. He was a bit nervous throughout the shoot. Yan Qingxi had his arms around her waist when shooting the couple photos. She could feel the tense muscles. They had to pause a few times to get him to relax. The director teased him. Xiao Leng, is Qingxi so pretty that you want to hold on for a little longer? No. I didn't. Is it not done? An indifferent masculine voice cut through. The director turned around and said hurriedly, CEO, you're here. Chapter 45. Yutingfeng's daunting gaze. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 45. Yutingfeng's daunting gaze. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Yan Qingxi's heart jumped when she heard the phrase, CEO. She turned around and was greeted with the sight of that bastard Yutingfeng. He was, as usual, a wolf in sheep's clothing. That high and mighty demeanor, as if no one deserved his attention, made Yan Qingxi laugh internally. She already knew this movie was never going to be smooth sailing. Yutingfeng did not forgive so easily. He tipped his head slightly. There was no humor on his face, unlike their previous meeting. Special Assistant Jiang quickly stepped forward. CEO, you happened to be around the area and decided to come to have a look at the photo shoot. Director Kai's project was funded by the Yu family. The studio that they were currently at was one of the many under the Yu family's banner. Director Kai did not think twice. Yan Qingxi pursed her lips and thought, King coincidence. Director Kai said, "Oh, we're ending soon. Just left with the couple photos which we can finish in an hour." Yu Tingfeng's gaze fell on Yan Qingxi, who was behind Director Kai. His eyes narrowed. "Carry on." Yan Qingxi was wearing a dark purple off-the-dot shoulder formal dress and makeup that was attractive in a delicate manner. The smirk on her face only enhanced her sexual appeal. Special Assistant Jiang sensed that there was something off with Yu Tingfeng's demeanor, but when he saw Yan Qingxi's outfit, he understood. Director Kai said to the young actor, "Leng Ran, okay, let's continue. Xiao Leng, focus this time." The photographer allowed the couple to change pose. This time, their side profile was facing the camera. Yan Qingxi leaned back against Leng Ran's chest while his arms circled her waist. Yan Qingxi felt the young actor tense up and asked, still nervous. "Fine. I'm fine. Don't worry. Just relax and you'll get used to it. Just treat me as your pillow." "Thank you, Miss Qingxi. I'll do my best." Yan Qingxi could feel a daunting gaze on her. She did not need to look to know who was responsible for it. She played dumb and did not turn to look. She was still deliberating on how to face Yu Tingfeng. Meanwhile, Yu Tingfeng was staring daggers at the hands around Yan Qingxi's waist. A heavy undertone of viciousness was forming and he sighed that eyed Jiang Lai beside him. Jiang Lai took the cue and went up to Director Kai. "Director, may I have a word?" Director Kai was stunned for a second. "Sure." The two walked aside and talked for half a minute. When they came back, Director Kai avoided Yu Tingfeng's gaze. She looked at Yan Qingxi with confusion on her face. Director Kai interrupted the shoot. "The effects are not really good with Leng Ran wrapped so tightly around Yan Qingxi." "Director, Leng Ran is doing well," the photographer said. Before he could finish, Director Kai spoke, "I feel that there's no need for such intimate stills. How about this, let's get a chair and use some of the props for the shoot." "Director." Here. A chair was brought over and the shots after that were mild. There was no intimacy or physical contact, they were kept at least an arm's length apart in all the shots. When the photo shoot was done, Yu Tingfeng was still there. Yan Qingxi ignored his presence and thanked the people on set. "Thank you, everyone, for your efforts today." Xiao Su hurriedly covered Yan Qingxi with a jacket while she spoke to the director, "Director, I'll go change first." Before Director Kai said anything, Yan Qingxi was already gone. Director Kai looked sheepishly over to Yu Tingfeng. "CEO." Yu Tingfeng left with a dark expression. Jiang Lai said, "Director Kai, thank you for the effort." Chapter 46. You're not the only one. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 46. You're not the only one. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Yan Qingxi entered the dressing room and sat down. She looked at her own reflection. She had a beautiful face, but those eyes. They were cruel with ambition. Yu Tingfeng was here, so what should she do? Yan Qingxi figured from his appearance and his gaze that Yu Tingfeng had some interest in her. Were it not the case, he would have sought revenge after the stunt she pulled. Since he was interested, she would have him hooked. Such interest can be grown, and Yan Qingxi planned on doing just that. If she had a choice, she would want to climb the ladder of success with integrity. Unfortunately, the entertainment industry was no place for integrity. A greenhorn without any connections or background would never make it to the top. With all that said, in the vast expanse of Luo City, there was no better support than Yu Tingfeng. Yan Qingxi did not have the resources to pick a fight with Yu Tingfeng and win. Instead of being crushed effortlessly as his enemy, using him was a much better option. The only thing holding her back was her pride. She would have to endure being stepped on by Yu Tingfeng, and the thought evoked a sense of sorrow in her. She stared at her two hands. When will these hands be able to give Yu Tingfeng a tight slap and be done with him? Yan Qingxi had always been a decisive person and was not fond of dwelling on an issue. She heard footsteps outside her door and walked to the wardrobe on the side. The door opened. Yan Qingxi had her back facing the door while her hand was on the zipper at the back of her dress. Yan Qingxi did not turn around. "Xiao Su, the zipper is stuck. Could you help me with it?" A moment later, someone appeared behind Yan Qingxi and unzipped the dress. The figure stood close to her. She could feel the person's warm breath tickle her neck. "That's all. Go on out. I'll change and come out." The figure behind her did not move. Yan Qingxi turned around and asked, "Why aren't you leaving?" She turned around and took a step back in surprise. She spoke in a lowered tone, "Oh. Mr. Yu. Didn't your teacher educate you about the etiquette of knocking?" When the door opened, Yan Qingxi already knew it was Yu Tingfeng. She could tell from the footsteps. Yu Tingfeng and Xiao Su had very different footfalls. Yan Qingxi was putting on an act. After all, seduction required skills. Yan Qingxi's step back was to set the tone of their encounter. Yu Tingfeng's almond-shaped eyes locked onto Yan Qingxi. He took 2 steps forward and caged Yan Qingxi against the back wall and his arms. "Everything here is mine. If I wanted, you would be mine. Why should I need to knock on the door?" It was obvious that Yan Qingxi was aware of his anger. She wanted him hooked and was not interested in the push and pull. "Fine. Then I'll leave." Yan Qingxi bent down to escape his arms but was forcefully pushed back against the wall. "Did I allow you to leave?" Her face turned sober and unsmiling, which made Yu Tingfeng annoyed. "May I know what does Mr. Yu want?" Yan Qingxi asked in an irate tone. Yu Tingfeng's thin lips curled into a sardonic smile. "That prank you pulled was cruel. Without me, who else could satisfy you?" The wound on Yu Tingfeng's neck was still throbbing. Envied that while the kick to his groin was not heavy, it was definitely a first in his life. The pain was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, he gathered. Just from that incident, Yan Qingxi, that woman, would forever be a lingering shadow in his heart. Yan Qingxi raised her head and gave a pretentious laugh. "Huh, funny. You're not the only one who can satisfy me." Chapter 47. Sorry, I am currently not interested in you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 47. Sorry, I am currently not interested in you. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Yan Qingxi shot him a look of disdain. "If it weren't for the fact that you have power and prestige, would really consider kicking you in the balls and ending your lineage right here." The words came from the bottom of her heart. She truly wanted to kick Yu Tingfeng to death. The unzipped dress hung loosely on Yan Qingxi's frame and her torso was barely covered by the fabric. She was practically exposed to Yu Tingfeng's hungry eyes. The 2 soft and snowy mounds were a sight to behold. No one could resist the temptation. The thought of the assistant that she had called out to help with the dress made him burn with anger. Hearing her words only fueled his anger. He leaned down and bit the skin on Yan Qingxi's chest. "End my lineage. Harsh. Another word about how many men you have and I'll make sure you'll never see another man ever again." Yan Qingxi winced from the pain and inhaled sharply. "Tsk. You're talking as if you aren't a man yourself." Yu Tingfeng's teeth were starting to hurt from this conversation. "Yan Qingxi, you're quite generous, aren't you? Letting a man undress you." She laughed. "So what? Not like you've never undressed me before. I suggest you bite a bit softer next time. Just in case the silicone implants burst. These are fake after all." Yan Qingxi knew beforehand that it was Yu Tingfeng entering the room. It was all an act. She knew the only way to pique Yu Tingfeng's interest was to dazzle him, and snare him, and let him come close but never giving him a bite. Yu Tingfeng let go of the soft flesh between his teeth. In the end, he was not as ruthless as Yan Qingxi, the swelling would go away in a day or two. He lifted her chin and stared at those lips. You have quite a temper. Yan Qingxi made a face as if she was too lazy to respond. Anything else? Yes. Well, hurry up. Speak, then leave. Yu Tingfeng looked straight into her eyes and said, I want to have sex with you. Yan Qingxi chuckled. She looped her arm around Yu Tingfeng's neck and leaned closer. Those red lips whispered softly into his ears, sorry, I'm not interested. Yu Tingfeng's body tensed. He pinned Yan Qingxi's body against the wall and said, do you think that's your decision? The cold wall pressed against her back. She was starting to feel uncomfortable about the situation. She did not look at Yu Tingfeng. Instead, she peered at the white fluorescent lights overhead. The words were uttered in a calm manner, sure, my words mean nothing. You are the young master of the Yu family, you can sleep with whomever you please. It's just, do you really want to stoop down to my level? Me, with my nose job, face fillers, fake boobs. It would be unbecoming of CEO Yu. Yu Tingfeng's finger toyed with the half-fallen dress that clung around Yan Qingxi's arms. That just so happens to be what I want today. At that moment, Yan Qingxi was regretting her decision to play coy with Yu Tingfeng. Her frustration manifested as a glare directed at Yu Tingfeng. She scolded, Yu Tingfeng, do you have a hearing problem? I don't want to sleep with you, so stop flirting with me. Yu Tingfeng's eyes narrowed to slits. Flirt with you? Clearly, she was the one who was flirting with him. Now it was his fault. In a fit of rage, Yu Tingfeng's hands went to her hip and pulled the hem of her dress. Yan Qingxi was getting a bit scared and pushed him. Don't fool around. Yu Tingfeng ignored her. There was a tearing sound. A hole was torn from the dress she was wearing. Yu Tingfeng was determined to take her here and now. Chapter 48. If you wanted a kiss, just say so. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 48. If you wanted a kiss, just say so. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Yu Tingfeng was determined to take her here and now. If not, he would never be relieved of the flame that had been suppressed inside him for the past few days. Yet, someone just had to interrupt them. A series of quick knocks later, the door opened. Ching. Yu Tingfeng's tall frame blocked Yan Qingxi completely. He growled angrily. Get out. Xiao Su was startled and quickly shut the door behind him. He shouted through the divide, Miss Qingxi, we're leaving soon. I'll wait for you in the car. You just hurry up. Yan Qingxi let out a relieved breath. She pushed Yu Tingfeng away. Let go. Yu Tingfeng remained unflinching. He was not letting her go so easily. Let go, she repeated. Yu Tingfeng was stone-faced as he tugged at his tie. I get whoever I want. No exceptions. Yan Qingxi's heart pounded, he truly could take her against her will if he wanted to. In a contest of stubbornness, she would lose out in the end. She cursed him in her heart as she bit her lip and softened her demeanor. Not now. I have other things to attend to. But I don't. There was no bottom line when it came to irrational people. Yan Qingxi shivered with anger. She honestly hated Yu Tingfeng's supercilious behavior. He had no regard for anyone. The only thing that mattered was his own wants and needs. Yan Qingxi squeezed out a sliver of a smile. Uncle, I really have business to attend to. Next time. Tonight, Yu Tingfeng said. She had an internal struggle in her heart but eventually agreed with a smile. Sure thing. Yu Tingfeng kept a close eye on Yan Qingxi to decipher if she was telling a bluff. Seeing that her smile was somewhat sincere, he slowly released her. I'll send someone to pick you up tonight. Yan Qingxi ignored his words and said, can you leave the room? I want to change into my clothes. Yu Tingfeng plucked at the dress that was barely hanging onto Yan Qingxi's frame. This is not the first time you've undressed before me. Still shy? Yan Qingxi choked back her anger. She nodded. That's true. Me taking off my clothes is much better than putting them on, especially for the men. Yu Tingfeng. She clenched her jaw as she kicked away her shoes and disrobed. She quickly changed into her own clothes. In her heart, she pictured cutting Yu Tingfeng up into pieces and feeding him to the dogs. As Yan Qingxi wore her clothes, she asked, Uncle, you get a kick out of sleeping with your niece, don't you? Yu Tingfeng's eyes stayed on Yan Qingxi. He realized now that letting her go was a mistake. Why did he go soft on her? Sure. It's interesting. Yu Tingfeng eyed her warily. A chilling smile appeared on her face. Getting caught by my aunt was fun, wasn't it? Yu Tingfeng hooked his arm around her waist. Why? You want a repeat of last time? Yan Qingxi stared at him. I think about it. Even in my dreams. After that, she pushed him. Alright, I gotta go now. Goodbye, Mr. Yu. Yu Tingfeng did not budge. He had a stoic expression but spoke with a hint of danger, no parting gift before you leave. At the end of his sentence, Yan Qingxi made him shut up. The kiss was akin to gasoline poured onto a meteorite, with all the sparks and explosions. Yan Qingxi kissed him until she was out of breath. She wiped her lower lip with her thumb and said breathily, if you wanted a kiss, don't talk so much, just do it. Chapter 49. How about a parting kiss? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 49. How about a parting kiss? Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Yu Tingfeng's face darkened after hearing those words. Yan Qingxi stroked his face. She placed a kiss on the side of his mouth and smiled feverishly. I remember Mr. Yu as a man lacking restraint. When you were tearing my clothes with such familiarity. That time with all the reporters, you kissed me with such passion, and you were naked too. And now you're acting all shy and coy. It's really not what I'm used to. Yu Tingfeng. Why did it feel like their roles had been reversed? His lines were stolen. This was the first time Yu Tingfeng was somewhat disheartened, yet he could not say a word. Yan Qingxi turned around and took her bag. Alright, I gave you your parting kiss. I need to leave now. Keep yourself entertained and stop whining. She chided as if she was a parent berating her child who was throwing a tantrum over candy. Yu Tingfeng wiped the lipstick stain at the corner of his mouth and smiled. He stuck his arm out to block the leaving Yan Qingxi. A package was shoved into her arms. From a cursory glance, Yan Qingxi realized it was a new phone. The exterior was flaming red, much like Yan Qingxi's Go.to lipstick color. Yan Qingxi lifted her head and stared at Yu Tingfeng's cool expression. It has my number. Don't call me unless it's important, he said. While his tone was indifferent, the words could be interpreted as such. If anything important happens, you must call me. Yan Qingxi thought of her own phone. Till today, Yu Tingfeng the bastard still refused to admit that he stole her phone that night. Fine, she would keep the debt in mind and collect when it was time. She laughed in a mocking tone. Oh. Is this a replacement for my stolen phone? Since when was our young master Yu so stingy? Do you think a phone will get you a woman? I'm not that easy. Yu Tingfeng's eyes flickered down toward her chest, hinting at her. Whatever you want next time, you can earn by servicing me. Yan Qingxi placed the phone into her bag. She trailed her finger under Yu Tingfeng's chin. All right. Be vigilant, for you'll be emptying your pockets willingly. 3 years ago, when they were caught, Yan Qingxi had told Yu Tingfeng that his money was not worth her time. Yan Qingxi was not lying then. Whoever she marked, she could skillfully extract money from them. Okay, I will be taking my leave. Not everyone can be like you, without a care for money. Yu Tingfeng said lazily, come and serve me and I'll guarantee that money won't be an issue. The words made Yan Qingxi feel like punching him in the face. She raised an eyebrow. That's for nighttime, not now. She waved and turned to leave. Yu Tingfeng watched as she walked away without so much as a glance back. He was not satisfied with just letting Yan Qingxi go. This trip would have gained him nothing. He trailed behind her with a smirk on his face. Say, Yan Mingxiu is still in the ICU, right? Yan Qingxi's face froze and her pace faltered. She did not turn around but asked, what did you say? Yu Tingfeng watched her silhouette. Yan Mingxiu got in an accident yesterday night, you don't know. Right at that moment, Yan Qingxi laughed. Oh, really? I really didn't know. Thanks for giving me such great news, I'll treat you a meal next time. Yu Tingfeng folded his arms and took stock of Yan Qingxi's calm demeanor. Guess who I saw yesterday night at 11 o'clock in Central Square? Chapter 50. The Best Way. Seduce him. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 50. The Best Way. Seduce him. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Guess who I saw yesterday night at 11 o'clock in Central Square? Yan Qingxi rubbed off the lipstick stain at the corner of her mouth and said softly, Mr. Yu is such a popular man in Luo City with his many acquaintances. Why are you asking me? I'm not your wife, so it doesn't concern me. If you really want my concern, marry me then. She was not admitting to any of it, to the point of saying such things with an unperturbed face. This woman was truly one of a kind. Yu Tingfeng was looking forward to the days ahead. Yu Tingfeng laughed and said, fine if you don't want to know. I got people to take care of Yan Mingxiu's motorbike. They won't find out about the brakes being sabotaged. Might want to handle it in a cleaner way next time. You won't be so lucky to have me there all the time. And not everyone is as kind as me. The animosity burned cold in her eyes. Her grip on her bag tightened. Yan Qingxi turned to face him and covered the distance in 2 quick strides. She tugged him down by his tie and spat, and... Are you threatening me? Yu Tingfeng gave her a smug look. If you say that, does this mean you're admitting to your crime? He never expected to meet a woman with such a cruel streak, yet he was not repulsed. On the contrary, he found it most interesting. Yan Qingxi's hand walked its way up to Yu Tingfeng's neck and fell on his Adam's apple. She gently massaged the bump while her face remained innocent. As if speaking to her lover, she crooned, it was me, I admit. Why shouldn't I? I am a murderess and you can go ahead and report me. After all. It's not like I haven't been to jail. Her lips twitched into a wily smile as her finger danced its way to his lips. She lowered her voice and said, you can go and tell Yen Rook, the woman who slept with her man 3 years ago is back. And, she plans to continue using her man. Let her come find me. Yu Tingfeng's breath became labored and he caught Yan Qingxi's dangerous hand. TSK. You really are the ballsiest woman I've ever met. This kind of hot, devilish women just so happen to be his type. Like an untamed stallion, wild and stubborn. If he did not rein her in, it would be a great regret in his life. Yan Qingxi looped her arm around Yu Tingfeng's neck and tugged. She bit his chin and murmured, of course. Without these balls, would I dare to sleep with my aunt's man? Isn't that so, uncle? Yu Tingfeng found purchase on her thin waist. You're right. Tonight I shall see how adventurous you are. Yan Qingxi's fingers pressed against his chest. Satisfaction guaranteed. She pushed him away and shot him a provocative smile before leaving. Outside the room, Yan Qingxi quickly composed herself. F*ck Yu Tingfeng got the jump on her. What luck she had that of all people who witnessed it, it had to be Yu Tingfeng. Now, what was she going to do? Kill the witness? No, the price for that would be too high for her to bear. The best way was to seduce him. Bonus. Yu Tingfeng, laying down and ready. You're welcome to seduce me. Quick, I cannot wait. Yan Qingxi. Next time, let me sharpen my knife beforehand. I wanna kill someone.